Winning is my world. Defeat can never have it. They can knock me down. I will rise again. I won't stay down. I will rise again. They might win a battle, but they will never win my war. Winning is my world. Defeat can never have it. They can knock me down. I will rise again. I won't stay down. I will rise again. They might win the battle, but they will never win my war. They've knocked me down before, and here I am, still standing, still going, stronger than yesterday, wiser than ever, better every day. Obstacles, challenges, tests. I will not lose. You can't beat someone who refuses to give up. And that someone is me. Come at me. Give me your best. I will rise to the test. I will defeat your best. Never be like the rest. Dear obstacle, stand down while you can. Run while you have a chance. Dear obstacle, if you want a challenge, pick me. I am your worst nightmare. Soon you will see. I just won't give up. I refuse to. Challenge me. I will destroy you. I'll win. That's what I do. Dear obstacle, you should know I just won't lose. I refuse to. You can't beat me. Not long term. Dear obstacle, don't take it personal. I do appreciate you. The challenge, the growth. But just know, I must destroy you.
Okay, welcome to Smitty's Endurance Podcast. I'm your host, Dave Smith. This is our first episode, and we're excited to bring to you some stories of various endurance athletes around the world. My apologies up front that this is going to be a learning curve and may take some time to dial in the idea. Most of the athletes we interview will be paddlers, triathletes, runners, or cyclists, but if there is someone you'd like to see interviewed, reach out to us and we'll see what we can do. I'd like to welcome onto the show today, Pete Mead. I've known Pete for several years now, initially through some teacher professional development and now as a fellow paddler. I've admired Pete since getting into the sport. Pete has been at the top of canoe marathon paddling for years and most recently finished third in the 2019 Asable River Canoe Marathon. Pete has finished in the top 10 11 times in the marathon, not to mention many top MCRA finishes. Welcome to the show, Pete.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here and talk about paddling and endurance sports in general.
Awesome. Were those numbers correct? Is it 11 top 10 finishes?
I don't keep track of that.
I was kind of going off the marathon website there. Assuming that's pretty accurate, that's what that had down. And then I think it's 16 finishes. Does that seem right?
Yeah, that's about right.
Okay. Awesome.
So yeah, this past year would have been my 20th start. I know that for sure.
Yeah. So. Yeah, it was a bummer with everything going on, but hopefully we'll be in the clear this year. And I think that'll be the case. So I'd like to start by winding the clock back. If you could talk us through some of your youth years, some of the sports you played growing up, and then eventually how you got into paddling.
Sure. I played the typical sports that you would when you were a kid, baseball, basketball, football. And then in high school, since we were so small, I was able to double up on sports for some seasons. So in winter, I would play basketball and did wrestling. And then in the summer, I was able to do basketball, track, and tennis. So, that was it. And then growing up in Grayling, that being the start of the marathon, being around it for so long, I fed a couple times, and then a buddy of mine, after I graduated, we're just sitting around talking and decided to buy a boat and start racing.
The rest is history, right?
Yeah.
Grayling, they won in football yesterday, right?
I saw that.
Yeah,
I don't keep good tabs on them, but yeah, they beat Nogany, I think so.
Yeah, awesome. So I'd like to jump into just talking about some of the different events that you've participated in, and I know it's probably going to be challenging to pick one, but if you had to pick a favorite race that you've done over the years, which one would it be and why?
Oh man, to narrow it down to like one event is tough. I narrowed it down to about 3, and people are going to say, it's going to be one of the Triple Crown races, and yes and no. The reason I love these 3 events is I love the after party. I love to hear the war stories of what happened out on the river, the things that went wrong and how people, got their stuff back together and then ended up, making it to the finish line. So, the 70 is an interesting animal. So it's always hot. But the marathon's got to be top of the list. Eating dinner after the finish and listening to race stories has to be the best part of the whole event.
Yeah, awesome. So kind of along those same lines, I looking at different results, and I know just it seems like that's part of the sport. It's pretty rare that 2 people would race all of the events together for a long span of time. So you've had a lot of racing partners over the years. Again, probably be hard to pick just one partner, but if you wanted to mention a few or more so maybe just what would be some of the characteristics that made those people that you paddled with a good fit for you?
Probably my favorite partner of all time is Al Whiting Jr. I've only been racing a few years, and the Whiting name is legendary in canoeing. So when we started paddling together when I was, just a young lad, for him to go out on a limb and paddle with me was amazing. And then we did really well. We matched up perfectly and had some really nice races for as young as I was and inexperienced. So probably my favorite partner. And then qualities of partners. I'd have to say somebody who loves to train. So somebody that just enjoys going out, getting their hours in. Mm-hmm. They're going to be good for the long haul. No questions asked. And then also somebody who enjoys suffering. The marathon is a suffer fest. So, and I've had a few that loved suffering so much that they would get stronger as the race went on. They wouldn't let suffering get in the way of doing really well.
Yeah, I love it. Love those attributes. That I can see how that would make you want to paddle with that person for sure.
Mm-hmm.
So kind of along, back to some of the races. If you talked about some of your more memorable races, what would make those days so special? Why would they be memorable?
I don't know. I've had a lot of. I've did 19 marathons. I don't know how many Triple Crown races. But each one's a little different. My first marathon was a hot mess. It was awful. We should have not lined up on the start line. From the gun, we're like, we can just take off like a bat out of hell and make it to the finish line, no problem. And 3 hours in, we were shot. So, and then it was my first year racing with Nick Walton. We were running 16th, and we just came over foot, and we saw a huge pack of boats ahead of us, and we ended up finishing in 10th. So we've passed 6 boats in the matter of an hour and a half for to finish, in the top 10. And then last year has to be the most, 2019 has to be the most memorable. Finishing third, like that was almost like a dream come true.
Oh, I can imagine.
It was a dog fight from the start, and to be able to come out and finish in the top 3 was incredible.
Awesome. So you mentioned Al Whiting Jr. there. So who would be some of the other veteran paddlers that you've learned from over the years? And if maybe share 1 or 2 things maybe from each of them.
Paddling's a weird sport. Unless your dad or mom were a paddler, to get into that group, to pick people's brains. A lot of paddlers don't like to give out, their secret techniques or their secret training regimen. But Al Sr. was more than willing to give up any information that you want. You could ask him anything, and that guy would talk your ear off. So both him and Junior really got me started. And then also Bill Schmitz, both or all 3. They're probably the reason why I am where I am now.
Okay, awesome. So speaking of that, and I, by no means, you don't have to share anything that you don't want, but I'd like to talk a little bit about some training. I know I've certainly picked your brain a bit here the last couple of years. If you wouldn't mind maybe sharing a little bit about your training philosophies, and that can go, maybe it's just talking about paddling, but maybe adding in a few other things, that you do for supplemental training that help you get ready for the canoe races for the year.
Sure. It used to be I would spend hours on the water. I'd have 200 plus hours in a boat before a marathon. Now it's way less. Having kids really takes that time away.
Yeah.
Not saying it's a bad thing, but so right now it's quality over quantity. Just about any time I get in the boat, I have a plan of what I want to do, and I try to maximize each minute. So really each day planning out what you're going to do and staying focused on that plan, and get your workout in, get off the water, and get back to my kiddos.
Yeah.
And then the past few years, I've really been incorporating, I always used to run, but it seemed like every time I went out to run 3 miles, it was always like trying to PR, like try to beat that time. And now it's just running with a low heart rate. I'm already getting taxing my heart with paddling, so I don't need to overtax it with the running, but I still want that extra like cardio work.
Yeah.
So doing that, and then as you get older, you have to listen to your body more and more.
Yeah.
So there'll be days I wake up and I'm just exhausted already, and I'm like, yeah, I'm not training. So, and then in the wintertime, I really try to lift a lot of weights, put on a few pounds of muscle, because you're going to burn it off in the summertime doing, long cardio runs for paddling. So I try to put on some weight, so I have something left in the tank by the time July hits.
Yeah. What would be an example of like one of the weight training routines that you would do? Are you just like, you have a little gym set up at your house, or do you go to the gym and kind of traditional free weights, or?
Yeah. I got a nice setup in my basement. I've got an elliptical treadmill. I've got a bench and a squat rack and dumbbells. So really, it varies from week to week. I'll go some weeks where my rep range is 15 to 25, and then Other weeks, my rep range will be 6 to 8. So it'll just depend on what part of the cycle I'm in.
Yeah.
But I never do like 2 really heavy weeks back to back. It's always one really intense week and then a light week.
Yeah. Now, are you lifting like how many days a week would you be lifting in the winter?
4.
Okay.
So, because I usually try to ski on Wednesday and then Saturday, Sunday.
Okay.
So,
And then come summertime, do you drop the weight training altogether when the paddling hours pick up, or do you keep a little bit going?
I still keep a little bit going, just like maintenance stuff.
Yeah.
Try to keep the shoulder strong and the core strong. So I'll still lift probably 2 days a week. Not anything as intense as right now, but just something to maintain.
Sure. What about during the season? Could you kind of give us an example of what your paddling workouts would look like for like a typical in-season week?
Sure. So I always take Monday off. I never paddle on a Monday. I don't know why, but just the way I am. Tuesday, I'll usually do intervals, and they can vary from 30 seconds all the way up to like a 20-minute interval. Wednesday, usually do just a steady, hour and a half paddle, nothing intense, and then another type of interval session on Thursday. Super easy paddle on Friday, and then some long hours Saturday and Sunday.
Okay.
So.
Yeah, awesome. So, switching gears a little bit, obviously in all endurance sports, the mental aspect plays quite a role. What are some of your go-to, maybe tricks that you use from a mental standpoint to keep you engaged and focused during some of those longer races?
That was my Achilles heel, like early on in my racing career. My mind just wasn't strong enough, and you get 4 or 5 hours in and just really just give up. Like, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm done. I'm out. So, but I'm going to give credit to my wife on this one. There was one year just before the race. She just looked me square in the eye and she's like, "You're not getting out of the boat. Like, you're getting to the finish line. I don't want to have to deal with the mess of you not finishing. So you're just I'll just tell you to get back in the boat and go." Yeah. And almost from that day, from that year, I've never been in the boat and been like, "Yeah, I'm getting out. I'm done. I just don't feel like doing this anymore." So, but you have to do your mental homework too. You've got to be ready for that time and, a 15-hour race where you're not going to feel good. You're not going to want to do it anymore. But you just got to tell yourself to suck it up and keep going.
Sure. Do you think it's gotten a little bit, easier the longer you've been in the sport?
Oh yeah. Yeah. Last year, 2019, if you're in a pack racing, it's completely different. But in 2019, there was never a second that I wasn't engaged in the race. I was laser focused that entire time of what we had to do. But there's been years where you're all by yourself, just paddling through the night, and you just get bored. Yeah. But that's when accidents happen in a race like that, though, too.
Sure. Oh, that's great. That's very, I'm sure a huge part of, those of you that do well is, you guys have figured out some of those mental strategies to take it to the next level. I'd like to ask you a little bit about some of the technical side of canoe racing. Could you maybe share a couple of tips that you think people starting out could maybe benefit from that, maybe you learned really early on that, just kind of helps with that learning curve as you're starting out in the sport?
Sure. Every new paddle, almost every paddler that I see come in, they do the same thing. That they're just they're missing free energy, and they'll paddle with just their arms. They'll be sitting in the boat and they're just moving their arms and they're not engaging, their body rotation. So that would be one. Getting ready for body rotation on a stroke, and then how you sit in the boat. You'll see them with their knees almost at their chin. So, that just makes them so unstable to begin with. So, lowering those knees and using your entire upper body to paddle instead of just the arms. So those are probably the two biggest ones. If they get those down real quick, then they'll be successful within a year or two.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, no, I think Ben and myself have kind of experienced some of that as far as when we started realizing that we were doing that. It's just amazing the little bit of difference, the energy that you save.
Yep. And trying too hard too. That's you'll see some guys get in the boat and they just want to rip. Just pull as hard as they can every stroke.
Right.
You do that, you're only going to last 5 minutes.
Yep. Yeah. Most of those races are certainly quite a bit longer than that.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd like to ask you a little bit about boats. I know I've bugged you here, a little bit, over the last year talking about boats. If you could tell us, what are the boats that you own, and what are your favorite boats that you've raced in over the years?
I think I've owned just about every design ever made. Right now I have a Corbin built Corbin. And then I have a Mark Reimer built Gillies. And then I have a Steve Landick and Everett Crozier built 203 C1. And my most favorite boat ever, man. It's going to be a Corbin. The Corbin is just fast. If you're stable and you and your partner work really well together, it's hard to beat a Corbin.
Yeah.
So
you can see that in, I know they've marked for the last few years kind of those top, they list everyone's boat, and it seems like the majority of you guys in the top 10, certainly that's kind of the go-to in the, in the marathon.
I think the Gillies is just as fast as well. It takes a special set of paddlers to paddle that boat. It's so twitchy. And then you can over paddle it. Like if you pull too hard, the boat just feels sluggish.
Sure.
But
yeah,
I don't know. Both of those boats are super fast.
Yeah. Awesome. So what about, nutrition, sleep, recovery, that sort of thing? I'm sure in order to do well, like it is in any endurance event, you got to have some of that stuff dialed in. Is there anything special that you do from a nutritional standpoint, or, maybe for recovery?
Nothing really. Meat and potatoes. That's about it for me. Vitamins. That's about it. Really, nothing special for recovery.
How about a go-to, in the marathon, like a treat, late in the night, or, something that you look forward to late in the marathon?
There's two things that are always on my my list when I make my fuel plan for the marathon, and it's Jello, and then a jug of Mountain Dew at Foot Dam.
Okay.
So when I get over the wall and I take that first sip, man, it's absolutely incredible.
Oh, I love
it's the
it.
best tasting thing, hands down. And I never drink pop like in the summertime. So when I get that first taste, man, I'm like, let's go.
Yeah, a little bit of kick there.
Yep.
So, I think I've experienced being newer to the paddling scene. That I feel like the paddling community is quite inclusive and can be really helpful. I certainly think I've experienced that, but do you think there's anything, as an overall paddling community, be that MCRA or just, in general around, the US, is there anything that people could be doing maybe a little bit differently to help grow the sport?
This was a tough question too, because I mean, that's one of my personal goals, is try to be as welcoming as possible to this, I mean, relatively small sport. But I came upon like the realization that we don't offer any like mentor races anymore, really, and not for the kids, but for like the adults. Like maybe there's a guy who wants to possibly paddle and wants to try it out before. We used to offer them, I mean, when I first started paddling, but we don't have those anymore. So I think that would be one thing that I'd like to bring back, is trying to get some type of mentor event going, or events, I should say. Have a couple of them.
Now, would those be a part of like the other MCRA events, or would it be more like a midweek type thing? Or
yeah, I think a midweek type thing would be best. But I mean, who's to say the MCRA wouldn't get on board with that as well?
Yeah.
So,
sure.
I mean, but it's tough too, because paddlers only have so many hours to train, and giving up an hour or two during the week to do something like that's tough. I mean, because
No, I can see that, especially, it seems like, I mean, definitely there's different pockets around the country that, there's strong paddling communities, but some of them, of course, deal with a long winter. And so by the time, you're back in the water, I can see how, a lot of those hours that you're putting in, you want them to be, like you talked about earlier, focused. But no, I love that idea. And, certainly something I think I'd take advantage of if that got rolling.
Absolutely.
So I know you're involved a little bit with Boardman Boat Works, correct?
Yep.
So could you share a bit about that, and maybe anything that you guys have going that you'd like the paddling community to know about?
Sure. I mean, Adam's really he's the everything behind it.
Yeah.
I just help out when I can.
Yeah.
But I mean, we're slowly getting started. A lot slower than both of us would like, but we just keep running into a very steep learning curve. I mean, we made our first mold, pulled out our first shell. We're super excited about it. Put it back in the mold, and then went to vacuum bag it again. And I mean, rookie mistake. We forgot to make sure everything was cleaned out of the bottom, and we ended up not completely messing up our first shell, but damaged it pretty good. And then we really wrecked our first mold. So we had to start from scratch with a new mold on that. But Adam's working really hard to get that done. So we'll be offering an Alpha 2020. We also have the V1 mold, and then we have the V1M mold as well. And then we also acquired the J180 mold from Everett and the J200 from Everett. So we'll have C1s in the future. We have a lot of work to do on those two molds just to get them ready to be able to pop out a boat. And then we also have a tripping boat. It's called the Sundowner from Everett. And right now, Adam's, as we speak, working on that to pop out a Sundowner mold. So we're doing our best to get stuff done, but it's a slow process right now.
Yeah. I think most people would be familiar with, most or all of those, but maybe not the Alpha. What is different about that boat that you guys are trying to do?
Yeah, the Alpha, it's our brainchild here. So we took a hassle, and then we just started cutting on a hassle suck in the stern gunnels and change a little bit up in the bow. The bottom stayed the same, so we tried to keep the integrity of the hassle design on the bottom, but it's just not paddler friendly for the stern paddler, because the stern would go way out and you'd be reaching way out to your side if you had to slide forward. So we thought if we sucked that in, it'd be paddler friendly for the stern guy. So that's really what we did. It's a hassle that has been modified. So, but below the water line, everything stayed the same. Above the water line, we made some big changes, but I think it's for the best on that design.
Yeah, cool. So I know I'm a big goals guy. I'm always setting goals. If not a year out, maybe even multiple years. Could you talk about some of your goals you have for the upcoming season?
To be able to race would be number one. I like to make goals too, but this year's tough. I don't know how I'm gonna do. I always want to finish in the top 10 of any Triple Crown race that I race in. And I mean, currently I don't have any partners lined up for the 70, the marathon, or even the Classic. So to put a number on how I want to do, that'd be kind of tough. So, yeah, I mean, it's right now it's really just to race and do my best. So, yeah. How about you? What are your goals?
Well, I'm kind of doing a mix. This year I'm gonna race a few triathlons. They're bringing back the half Ironman towards Traverse City. I mean, it's in Frankfurt now.
Yep.
Mid-September, so I'm gonna do that, and then otherwise, pretty much focus on paddling. I am going to do the M22 challenge there in June. Just it ends with a small paddling portion. But otherwise, yeah, I mean, just trying to, Ben and I are going to give the marathon another go. And, we're pretty confident we can, certainly improve from the race in 2019. How much improvement, be hard to tell. But, I think we're both training hard right now, just, laying down a good foundation. And then, once spring hits, we'll be in the boat a bunch and trying to, just keep the progression going. I think I've been happy with our progression so far in 2 years. It's been, as much as I guess I would have hoped for compared to when we started that first day jumping in your boat for the very first time. So it's been, and it makes it more fun, the further along you go. It's nice being able to do, a few hour paddle and not feel destroyed and stay upright and, kind of once in a while feel that groove where you're being efficient and all that. So yeah, I'm looking forward to a good year.
You guys will make a big jump on year 3. That was when I really started to feel the difference, was the third year.
Sure.
Like first 2 years were real shaky, but that third year, that's when it was like everything clicked. So
yeah, I'm seeing glimpses of it. We both got a hold of the C1, in the last 6 months, and we've been meeting, at least once a week, on the Asable, just for a hour and a half paddle, give or take, and but just that extra C1 time, I know for me especially, has already started to make a difference. When you're in a C2, I always kind of felt like, there were times where, in the stern, maybe wasn't training or paddling as that much of an effort as Ben was in the bow. But, now that I'm in the C1, it's, you're kind of earning every stroke,
Yeah, there's only one person to blame in a C1.
Exactly. Yep. So it's already made me stronger.
Good.
Well, hey, that's about all I have, Pete. I guess lastly, I do always like to give an opportunity to, give a shout out to anyone that helps you throughout the season, be it a sponsor or just, any person or people that, really go out of their way to help you be successful in your your races?
I mean, it's my wife and kids are like, they're number one.
Sure.
I mean, every year I ask them, like, hey, can I race this year? And every year they tell me, yeah, go for it, you know? So I got to thank them first and foremost. And then secondly, my mom and dad. Each year for the marathon, we invade their property, you know, for marathon week. And they've always been huge supporters of me. And then Adam at Boardman Boat Works, he saved my 2019 marathon. Chris and I tore a huge hole in the side of his boat like 3 days before the marathon. And Adam, without hesitation, bring it over. He stayed up. I mean, I don't even know how late, fixing it for us so that, I mean, we could race that boat for that marathon. And then Bob from ZRE Paddles has always been a huge sponsor of mine, like for the past, you know, like 10 years.
Okay, awesome. So. Yeah, I love hearing, you know, the fact that you incorporate your family. I think that's, you know I certainly do the same with mine, and it's, you know, I think that's just makes it all the more worthwhile. And also I'm sure like you, it's fun, you know, showing your kids what's possible. You know, that's it's a pretty neat event to bring them along to.
It is. And I think that's another reason why I like racing or canoe racing so much, is it's a huge family sport. I mean, when we camp before a race or after a race, like hanging out with the other families of the paddling community, I mean, that makes it worth it. So
awesome. Hey, thanks a lot for your time. I'll, you know, I'm going to find a few different places to put this on social media, and then it'll be, you know, I'm still working out exactly which different podcast, you know, venues that will host this, but I'll keep you posted on that.
Sure. Thanks for having me.
Yep. Take care.
Yep. Bye-bye.